All right, everyone, welcome to the Revenue Subcommittee meeting for April 1st, 2021. Apologies for the change in time. We had to call an audible and move the time up because of conflicts with this evening's floor session and caucus meetings. We have a number of bills on the list today. We have about an hour to get through them all. What I'm going to do just in terms of process is we'll start off with what I think are likely to be the bills that won't get a lot of discussion, so we can go ahead and move those through. And then we will get to the bills that will have some amendments. Any of those bills that have amendments that if we run out of time at 1 hour, we're going to have to cut ourselves off. But I'll call an additional subcommittee meeting tomorrow to finish up any work we don't get done on these bills today. You should today or tomorrow also get a list for next Tuesday, the 6th. And that will also be a fairly extensive list of bills as we come closer and closer to sine die. So I'm going to start with Senate Bill 48, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Living Organ Donors. This is an identical cross-file to Delegate Lewis Young's bill that we had passed out previously. It just slightly increases the subtraction modification for living organ donors. Are there any questions or a motion?
Move favorable.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay, the bill is recommended favorably to the committee. Senate Bill 447 is a historic revitalization tax credit for, you'll recall, this is the issue having to do with properties that are actually technically owned by the state park system, but conservators come in, take ownership of them, invest in restoring the properties. It's identical to the version of Delegate Buckles that we passed out earlier this year and the version of mine that we passed out last year and the Senate didn't act on. Are there any questions or a motion on this bill?
Move favorable.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay. Senate Bill 678 is the bill that extends the report deadline for the Task Force on the Economic Future of Western Maryland. It is likewise identical to what we passed out of the House. Is there any discussion or a motion?
Move favorable.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? We should do every subcommittee meeting like this. This is great. Just keep it rolling. Senate Bill 539 is the cross-file of Delegate Ebersaw's bill that extends by 2 years the food donation pilot program. This also is identical and has no amendments. Any discussion or a motion?
Move favorable.
Second.
Been moved and set. See, this time Delegate Ivy, Delegate Feldmark moved and seconded her own motion, so you're not alone. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion on the bill? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? All right, the bill moves forward. Okay. Senate Bill 778 is the bill that adjusts the Regional Institution Strategic Enterprise or RISE zone program. George, you sent around amendments on this one, right? Can you describe those amendments for us?
Yes, sir. The amendments simply conform the bill to House Bill 1279 as passed the House. As you'll recall, the amendments clarify some of the provisions relating to the rental assistance program that is instituted by the bill.
Any questions on the amendments?
So, George, what we're doing is conforming the Senate bill to what we already passed exactly.
Correct. Correct.
Great.
And as noted earlier, it passed the House 131-4.
Any discussion? Is there a motion on the amendments?
Move favorable. Second.
There we go. So the amendments have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? The amendments are adopted. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Move favorable.
Second.
Bill's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right. So that bill is recommended favorably. I skipped one. So let me go back to Senate Bill 80, Economic Development, Maryland Technology Development Corporation alterations. This is a cross file of Delegate Feldmark's bill that made some adjustments to TEDCO. There's one difference between the Senate bill we see in front of us and the House bill that we passed out. You'll recall that we added language to the House bill to require that one of the seats be a seat held by a person representing a historically Black college and university. The Senate added language that basically requires that that seat must periodically rotate between different HBCUs. So it wouldn't be one HBCU permanently. The different HBCUs would have the opportunity to have representation. They're adding, George, my understanding is they're going to add that same language to the House bill that went over. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. House Bill 6 will be amended to be in the same posture as Senate Bill 80.
Sure. Delegate Feldmark, you have a question?
I just actually wanted to discuss that a little bit, the amendment that the Senate added. So I think the basic intent was good. I think the problem with the amendment that was added is it actually creates term limits for one member of the board that don't exist for the rest of the board. And so I think a better solution, and I think this was going to come out in the hearing today, but since we're meeting before the bill hearing, I think a better solution would be to say that when a representative from an institution of higher education, there's two seats, one specifically for HBCUs, but two representing higher education, that when one of those members leaves the board, the replacement should be from a different institution, so that it's a rotation without imposing a term limit, and so that we're treating HBCUs and other colleges and universities the same way. So I, as I said, because we're meeting before the hearing, and I know the Senate was working on moving in that direction, but that revised amendment didn't happen. So I thought we'd be able to just conform to their revised amendment on the House bill, but I think we should go ahead and iron that out.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't we hold the bill? I think I'm also gonna, I realized as well from your comment, we have not yet had the hearing on the departmental R&D tax credit bill, SB 196. So I think for both of these bills, I'll call a subcommittee meeting for tomorrow with these two bills. And if you could work to try to figure out that language and
Sure.
get that amendment drafted for discussion, that'd be great. Okay.
Happy, thanks.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Yeah. Delegate Barnes, go ahead.
Because Delegate Feldmark and I had discussions centered around that particular issue. It's still my concern that that the Senate has imposed that if there be any movement, it's centered around the HBCU portion or member of the board. But I did not see anything as it relates to any other member rotating in or out. So that causes more of an alarm for me that we are targeting one particular group or organization or institution that has to rotate their membership off the board, and we're not moving anybody else off the board in a year or two, whatever they had proposed. So all in all, I had concerns, but I do like the compromise in which Delegate Feldmark said, we can look at, but I'm looking at the totality of the board members, and no one else is moving except for those HBCU members.
I think that's a fair critique. We have obviously a number of options with this bill. I think let's hold it till tomorrow so we have some time to try to figure this out. But when it comes up tomorrow, we could, of course, adopt a new amendment that only relates to, as Delegate Feldmark describes this issue with the HBCU seats. We could adopt an amendment to require more rotation across the entire board. We could simply reject the Senate amendment and conform this bill to the House version, and then see if it goes to conference or whatever. So we have a number of options in front of us. Delegate Ivey, did you want to say something?
I was just going to echo the sentiments of Delegate Barnes. Thank you.
So let's hold it till tomorrow. We can have some while we're sitting through a long floor session, we'll have time to have some conversations, I think. So we'll see if we can get that hammered out.
Yes, sir.
And as I said, I'm also going to hold SB 196 until tomorrow because the hearing on that is not till this afternoon. So let's look at the departmentals. And we'll start with SB 186, the job creation tax credit for hiring veterans. And George, we had amendments submitted on this one, right? Or am I remembering?
No, I do not have any amendments that were submitted with respect to this bill. Just as a refresher, it would extend the termination date of the JCTC until January 1st, 2027, establish an enhanced credit for hiring of a qualified veteran, extending program eligibility to small businesses who hire qualified veterans, and then it would repeal, as a result of those changes, the Hire Our Veterans tax credit.
So lacking any amendments, the discussion is on the bill. Does anyone have questions or discussion on the bill as it came to us? Delegate Buckle?
George, you just said at the end, and that's my fault. I'm not as my memory's not working as good in familiarity with this particular bill. Did you say we're eliminating the hiring for veterans tax credit because we're creating we're just expanding the JCTC, making it
Correct. It's being incorporated into this credit instead.
And will the credit amounts, are they capped? And if so, will the amounts still be the same available for hiring veterans and getting that benefit?
The benefits for hiring a veteran are equivalent.
Okay, so there's no changing the ability of the employer to get the credit just because we're eliminating it in one definition and throwing it in. The JCTC, refresh my recollection, is it capped at all so that you only get a pro rata amount when you apply?
There's a overall cap, I believe, with respect to the program. There's a total of $4 million in tax credits that are awarded on a first come, first served basis.
Okay, and so when we had the tax credit simply for a standalone credit, so to speak, for hiring veterans, that did or did not have a cap. I'm just wondering if by putting it in the JCTC,
that was capped as
money.
well at $500,000.
500,000. So we're not expanding the JCTC cap. We're just throwing a new group of people in. You get what I'm saying? I'm probably not saying it very well. We're
The
taking
cap was not
our
expanded.
cap program and throwing it into a $4 million cap program without increasing the $4 million to 4.5.
So Rhonda has her hand up. Rhonda, you can
Okay.
jump in, provide some clarity maybe.
Yeah, would like to provide a little bit of background. The Hire Our Veterans credit, the utilization was poor. I think we may have had 9 businesses, if that many, that participated for a total utilization of maybe 21,000. And I think there may be a statutory cap of 500,000. Lonnie, please correct me if my numbers are incorrect. The JCTC has a $4 million cap. To date, we have not reached that cap, delegate, so that every business who has applied to be certified has gotten the full amount. I think we may be at around 3 million, 3.5 million utilization. And so we felt that rather than having a standalone program that wasn't that effective, roll it into JCTC and actually sweeten the incentive a bit. So the amount of the incentive for hiring a credit, hiring a veteran actually increases as part of JCTC. It makes the credit more attractive and worth filling out the paperwork.
Okay, that's great explanation. I appreciate that.
Delegate Ivy, you had your hand up for a second. You still have a question?
No, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the bill? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move
I'd
favorable.
like to move favor. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, the bill is recommended favorably to the Ways and Means Committee. 19 is the departmental bill that makes institutes some reforms to the biotechnology investment tax credit. Delegate Carr has brought a number of amendments for us to consider. I've asked her to sort of present them individually as separate issues so we can vote on them individually to the extent that that's necessary. It's just a cleaner way to do it. So I will turn it over to her to introduce the first of the amendments she will be offering.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I'll start with amendment. I don't know how to read an amendment. Amendment number 403226-1. This amendment would require, let me read the correct amendment here. Okay, so this amendment is based in one of DLS's recommendations from their 2018 evaluation. And they noted that there's no safeguards in this program to keep company insiders from being able to get the tax credit. Now, I not that long ago was myself a startup founder, and I understand that founders of companies and early employees of companies often put their money into the company because there aren't a lot of outside investors banging down the door to invest. So what this amendment simply does is it says that for a company that's been in business for more than 5 years, that a founder or current employee could not get the biotech investor tax credit. So it's this idea of keeping company insiders from benefiting from the tax credit. And again, this was something that was recommended by DLS in their most recent evaluation.
So essentially, I think the intent is, once a business is out of the friends and family round, that they would then be able to, then the credit would only be used by people who were not, direct founders or current employees.
That's exactly right. It's trying to actually incentivize new investors to come in rather than giving a tax credit to people who are already going to put their money into the company.
All right. I saw Delegate Barnes and then Delegate Buckle. Delegate Barnes?
I just had a question because, I'm a small business owner as well. And just looking at that time frame of 5 years and understanding that, even as a new startup, 5 years is still I'm getting to know you kind of phase and growing my business. How did you come up with 5 years that one could be excluded from receiving the credit?
That time frame was in the DLS report, and I will note I have run this amendment and the other ones by Commerce, and they were comfortable with this one.
Yeah, I just think that 0 to 5 years is kind of, I'm still trying to grow my business. I'm still trying to do all the necessary things to be successful, which has some concerns for me.
All right, Delegate Buckle.
That was similar, very similar to my concern. I think Julie, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, I think probably knows maybe a little bit more about the biotech industry, the lifespan of than what I do, and that's what I just wanted to throw out there is my understanding, mainly stemming from being on the committee for 7 years and hearing a lot of the biotech people come in and discuss things and having dialogue with them, is it's an extremely risky business, so to speak, that a lot of times the lifespan of the product development, whether it's a vaccine or a pharmaceutical or a medical device, takes a long time to find out whether or not the product will ever be viable. It'll be approved by the various regulatory agencies, and then there's really a market for it so that you can either take your company public or attract larger investment or merge, whatever it may be. And I just kind of have the same concern. I know you said DLS says, well, 5 years is fine. And maybe George knows this answer certainly better than what I do. Is it a 12-year program? Did we change it to that so you can get the credit for up to 12 years?
As amended, there's a 12-year max.
Okay, so it's a 12-year max. I don't know that there's a perfect answer. I guess similar to what Delegate Barnes said, I'm a little concerned that these companies will come in, families, friends, whatever, they'll be very enthusiastic. They'll want to take advantage of the tax credit. Maybe they need to put a little bit more money in year 6 or 7 to try to get the company to fruition, get the product to market, and that incentive would be removed. So that's just my thought. I'm not sure if there's a solution to the right number of years, but I'm concerned about that.
So just one clarification, the amendment, as I read it, and Delegate Polakovich-Carr, correct me if I'm wrong, it wouldn't forbid family and friends from continuing to invest, What it would forbid is founders or current employees from benefiting from the credit after the first 5 years. So family and friends can still invest and get the credit through the entire length of the program under this amendment.
Yeah, but the credit is essential to the viability of the business as a whole, right? Am I missing something?
I mean, I guess I would say that, according to the own language that Commerce included in their, introduction of this bill, that the goal of the bill is to increase the number of investors. If it's meant to be bringing in new investors to put new money into businesses by giving the tax credit to people who already were putting money in and who were going to kind of, regardless of this tax credit, I guess my concern is that we're rewarding people for behavior that they would have done anyways and that they are doing anyways. Like, we know that founders and sometimes current employees put money into businesses, especially in the early days. But by 5 years, the company should be off the ground enough that we shouldn't continue to reward that. At that point, this is about, the tax credit should be about drawing in new investors and rewarding them.
I had one quick question too on a slightly
Hold
different
on,
way.
hold on a second, Delegate Buckle. Let me take Delegate Feldmark first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see her on my screen.
No problem.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So I guess just to clarify my understanding of your last comment, Delegate Polakovich-Cart. So is the idea that for someone who is a founder of a company or an employee of a company, they may continue to be personally invested in the business after the first 5 years. Their return on that investment is in their role in the business as the founder, as an employee, right? That they're continuing to benefit from that directly in that role, that they don't need the additional tax incentive. Is that?
I'd say that's fair.
Is that basically it? Okay.
Delegate Buckle.
My question is the term founder defined in the law? I mean, we all know what it means, just colloquially. But I'm concerned. So a founder, if the business is organized, let's say as an LLC, and you have friends or family, because we talked about that, it doesn't say friends or family are excluded. But if the driving force, the woman who started the company goes to her and her brother and says, hey, you each put $50,000 in, and you're going to own 10 units. It's what we call LLC shares. We call them units in Maryland law. You own units. Are they then a founder? Because, I could see a legal definition saying, well, you're one of the founding members of the LLC. You're one of the founding partners of a partnership. You're one of the founding shareholders at the inception of the company. Are you a founder? Because then that would sort of preclude that larger scale group, whether they're friends, family, whatever, from continuing to make additional equity investments and gain the benefit of the credit. So I don't know if founder is anywhere defined, either in this bill or in some other area of Maryland law that we could extrapolate in.
And I think it's a fair question. To my knowledge, I don't believe it's defined. I would have to double check. I mean, if we wanted to be more specific in that regard, I mean, trying to figure all the possible legal structures for a company, we could say board member or partner. There might be other terms that we could use that might be more specific in our design elsewhere.
Recall as well that the department would be implementing this. And so one presumes the department would define either through regulation or practice what they meant. So we can take a straight up or down vote on this amendment, or Delegate Buckle, it seemed for a second like you were suggesting maybe a change in the number of years. You could offer an amendment to the amendment that would be in order. I don't know what folks want to do from here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know if Delegate Barnes has thoughts. I don't have a great solution of a bright line. Like I said, I'm not sure that 5 is different than 6, 4 is different than 7. I don't know. I appreciate certainly what my friends try to do with the bill. I just don't know if this amendment will get too complicated. I know we're coming to the end of session. Maybe a better way to do it is to limit the amount that they can continue to put in and claim for the credit after 5 years. So, you can get the full value of it through the 5 years. And then after that, you can only get a reduced value. I don't know. I'm just conceptualizing, I guess. It's up to you, certainly, Mr. Chairman, of how you want to procedurally go.
No, look, so this committee's under the rules of the House, and any member has the ability to offer an amendment to the amendment if they like. If somebody wants to do that, they're welcome. If not, then I have to call a straight up or down vote on this particular motion on the amendment. Actually, technically, it hasn't been moved yet, but so look at Blackwood's card. Do you want to do that so we can get back under the rules?
I move the amendment.
Delegate Feldmark had a question.
Second.
Been moved and seconded.
Okay.
Delegate Feldmar, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wondered if the department could comment on the timeframe, because my understanding was this was an amendment they were comfortable accepting. And so, you know, it sounds like from the department's perspective, 5 years is reasonable. I'm just wondering if you can shed any, if Rhonda or someone could shed some light on that.
Rhonda, Lonnie, Jen, I don't know if any of you have any thoughts. Or if the thought is a no comment, that's fine too.
Yeah, I think it's a little difficult for us to be certain. It would be, the industry would really know better than we would what amount of time frame is appropriate. And we were comfortable with the general concept of the amendment, and we don't have any initial gut reaction concerns with it. But again, it's not something that we've spent any significant amount of time or any time looking into to be able to say definitively what amount of time frame would be appropriate.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, Delegate Long, you're going to have to turn your camera on because we're doing the vote by physical raising of hands.
Okay.
All those in favor of this first Polakovich-Carr amendment, please raise your hands. Okay. Any opposed?
Okay, I will. Can you see me?
Yes. Thank you, Delegate Long. So the amendment is added 4-3. Delegate Polakovich-Carr, do you want to move on to the next one?
Yes. So the next amendment is the one that is 603422. This amendment would add reporting language to the Department of Commerce to study how tax investment incentive tax credit might be awarded competitively going forward. So this is just reporting language. This was a recommendation that came out of that 2018 DLS evaluation. Since this tax credit is currently awarded first come, first serve, and is oversubscribed, you know, it is not maybe being targeted to the companies that could benefit most from it. And having Commerce look at having a potential for a competitive award process in the future could make the tax credit more effective going forward. And Commerce had seen this amendment and was comfortable with it. And I move the amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? All right, let's go on to the next one.
Okay, so the next amendment is 593729. This amendment would add a sunset date on the tax credit of July 1, 2021. As we've discussed about other bills that have been moving through the subcommittee this year, it is good practice to have sunset dates on tax credits. It ensures that we do come back and reevaluate them periodically to make sure that these things aren't just on autopilot, but if, you know, legislative changes are needed, that the bills get the attention of the legislature and we have an opportunity to weigh in periodically. This amendment has been seen by Commerce. They were comfortable with it. I will note at this point that this tax credit is one of the few, you know, of these economic development tax credits that do not have a sunset date at the moment. So again, the sunset date would be July 1, 2027.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll just add, and I know this is controversial, and there have been attempts in the legislature in the past to add a sunset date on biotech, which have been very controversial. And as somebody who considers myself a strong supporter of the biotech industry, to me, this is not about biotech. It's about good tax policy. I just think, you know, it's good for us as a legislature to have these periodic sunsets because it forces us to take another look at the programs and revise them as necessary. So that's my point of view. I plan to vote for it. I hope The industry does not interpret this in any way as a criticism of the program itself, but as a matter of good tax policy. Delegate Buckle.
So I'm just gonna say, I mean, I think that that's probably exactly right, that for virtually every program, we should have a sunset so that we are a couple of years before that sunset really having an honest legislative review of the program. My only concern with this particular credit in this particular industry is, again, that 12-year life cycle. These aren't people who are coming in and saying, hey, I'm getting a credit for a 1 or 2 year capital investment. I'm starting a company in Maryland. I'm going to have the jobs, and it'll bleed out. And then my light just went off again. This one, to me, because of the 12-year life cycle and the need for the investors to rely upon that, and when you say it will sunset, will you say that, let's say people get awarded the credits in 2026, and that's the first year of the 12-year program for them? Will they then be like, well, I don't know, it's going to sunset next year, maybe I won't invest in it? And so I appreciate, I don't want to belabor anybody's time. I understand where it's going. That's probably why I will vote against the amendment and think that this program, because of the length and the life cycle of the product and its necessity for Maryland's economy, I'm a big favor of the sunsets in general. I just have some heartburn about this one.
Delegate Barnes has 2 hands up right now, so he gets to go next.
I was hitting the buttons. I don't know what the hell I was doing, but I just had a question in regards to the sunset as well, because I just know the historical nature of the biotax credit and the success that we have. Do we know the number of people that have benefited from the tax credit and why we would sunset it?
I think the department may be able to tell us if there's a ballpark figure of how many companies or individual investors have benefited from the credit. Rhonda, Lonnie, or Jen, any of you have those numbers memorized or at easy access?
I do not have our report in front of us. All of that's contained in our Maryland Jobs Development Act. We will have the number of QMBCs, which stands for Qualified Maryland Biotech Companies, as well as the number of investors. We did our very, very deep dive in 2019. We took a look at everyone who had participated since inception. And for many of those companies, they were repeats. And the reason being, they still needed the capital from the investors, because as Delegate Barnes mentioned, it's a long haul industry, and they need the time. So, I'm not sure what the right timeline is for the sunset, but I think, as you know, Delegate Lukey, you will get significant pushback from the industry on this one.
Certainly.
Okay, Lonnie just chatted me, 250 million in private investment since 2007. So the budgeted tax credit over that period was able to leverage that much in private investment, 250 million.
And Jen shared in the chat as well for the members, you should be able to see it, I think, a link to the BITSI reports. So the second BITSI link I clicked on said that over the course of the credit, the number of applicants receiving initial tax credit certificates under the program was 2,277. But that's I think that's investors. That's not companies, I think.
I apologize. I have to leave. I know we moved the time date for the subcommittee today. I had something else that I can't miss.
Sure.
Planned for a couple minutes. So I have to leave. I don't get to vote. I would vote against this one, but I understand where it's coming from. And
I'm happy to record. Well, we don't record votes, but I'm happy to count you as a no vote on this.
On that amendment. Okay.
Discussion before Delegate Buckle leaves, so we can go ahead and take the vote on this one. Okay, there is. Okay, go ahead, Delegate. Delegate Buckle, you can go. I'll count you as a no vote.
Okay, thank you.
My question is actually to I think maybe address Delegate Buckle's issue, which is the concern is that investments are made with the sort of 12-year horizon in view. I'm not sure why we can't sunset new credits, right? Like or new investments, I should say. If there's a sense that the need for an adequate incentive has to provide 12 years of the credit, couldn't we at least sunset, for when new investments would be eligible for the credit and still allow those investments to realize the full 12 years?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And actually, I would just ask clarification. I'm not entirely sure with the way the amendment is drafted. It says the department may not issue any tax credit certificates under this section on or after July 1, 2027. Are the tax credit certificates for a single year, or do they give that investor 12 years? If either George or the department can answer that.
You said single year.
Could we change the way that was drafted so that we said, cannot issue an initial certificate to an investor after, or some wording to allow the full value of the incentive, but still say, legislatively, we should be checking in on these programs.
If I can clarify a little bit, this program is different than, for example, the More Jobs for Marylanders program, where a company is certified and as long as they remain eligible, they can continue to claim the credit for 10 years. This program doesn't function in that same way. It's each year is essentially a new eligibility cycle.
I'll just say, I understand that I don't think we need to get too bogged down in this issue, though, because the fundamental question is, should there be a sunset of any kind, right? And I don't foresee, frankly, bluntly, I don't foresee the sunset ever actually going into effect. I think Maryland's a state with a very strong biotech sector that I think we all support. I think what the sunset does is it forces the conversation 5 years down the line for us to sort of think about, are there further adaptations that need to be made in the program? Now, I think, the industry, and I think if the Tech Council were here right now, they would agree with what Delegate Buckle said, that their argument consistently against a sunset on this particular credit has been that issue of business certainty. And, I get that. But, like I said, I personally plan to vote for it. It's not anything to do with the industry. It's just about how we make tax policy. And I tend to believe sunsets are a good way to force the legislature to take an active role in adapting credits. Delegate Palachvich-Carr.
And I would agree with you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I'll say even in my short time in the legislature, I think whether you like certain tax credits or not, these things do stick around even when they have a sunset date. And there's, in fact, nothing that keeps the legislature from acting early. We don't have to wait till the 2027 session to extend the sunset date. I can recall back to the 2019 session, there were a couple of departmental bills that came in that were extending tax credits, a year or 2 years in advance of the actual sunset date. The action could be taken, to review and to make any alterations and then to extend the sunset, well in advance of that date, because we've done it before.
Delegate.
Go right ahead, Lonnie.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple things to what Jen was saying. One, it is a fiscal year program, and every fiscal year the bio company has to meet the qualifications. And then two, each year also the qualified investor has to apply and be qualified. Because our program and the statute mandates the investment to be made at a certain time, we qualify the investor. We give them an initial certificate to authorize the investment. They have a set period of time to make the investment. We permit the use of convertible notes, and that note has to have been executed within a year of the investor applying to the program. So just to let you know, there are several companies that would enter into a note a year before anticipating applying into the program, in the hopes that they are earlier on in the queue, that they will be able to make that investment for the tax credit. So that if there is a sunset, it is very imperative that it's reviewed way in advance so that it doesn't impact those investors that are considering making notes at least a year in advance before the sunset.
Given that, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, just to give us more time on the sunset review, would you be comfortable if we move the date back 1 year to July 1, 28 instead of 27? That's fine. So I move to amend the amendment to read on or after July 1, 2028 instead of July 1, 2027. Is there a second on that motion? Second. Second. All those in favor of that amendment to the amendment. So we're not voting on the amendment itself. We're just voting on moving the date in the amendment back by 1 year. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. Opposed. So on the amendment itself, now, which reads, the department may not issue any tax credit certificates under the section on or after July 1, 2028. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to take the vote. I'm going to count Delegate Buckles' vote as a no vote, given that he registered it essentially before he left. All those in favor of adopting this amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The amendment's adopted. We have, I think, one final amendment on this bill. That is right. Amendment 253521. And I'll say I'm actually offering this one for discussion and very much do want to hear from my colleagues in terms of where they're at with this. So this amendment would create a 20% set aside for the biotech tax credit for companies that are new applicants. Again, this comes out of a recommendation from the 2018 DLS evaluation, which noted kind of the pretty dramatic decline and small proportion of companies that are actually new applicants that are getting the credit at this point, and that's been true for like a decade or more. And the issue with that is that new applicants tend to be earlier stage companies and companies therefore that are actually more in need of getting the tax credit because they are having more trouble to raise funds. Commerce did have concerns with this amendment, both because of perhaps the difficulty in administering it, as in fairness, as well as they point out they feel like the other changes that are made, in the bill as before us right now, have some changes to address that. And in fairness, I will point out that the bill before us does have a lifetime cap of $7 million that any one company's investors can receive. And I do think that is a change that does get at this issue. The question is it far enough or not? And that like I said, at the top of this, very much do want to have a real conversation about this. I'm not quite decided what to do with this amendment at this point, but did want to raise it because this has been one of the fundamental flaws with this program is that more mature and established companies get the lion's share of the money and not the early stage companies that actually need the money and would benefit most from the money. I don't know if anyone from the department wants to jump in. I know you all had concerns about this amendment and worried about its actual implementation.
Yeah, I can jump in a little on that. As the delegate mentioned, one of our main concerns was a lot of the changes that we've included in the bill as it was introduced were intended to help with this exact issue. So on top of the 7 million lifetime cap, we also reduced the percentage of the credit so that the funds can be utilized by more businesses. They won't be necessarily claiming as large of a credit each time. There can be more investors taking place as well. And we had concerns because this bill was the result of a couple years now of research within the department and also outreach to the industry. And I can't remember for sure, Rhonda can remind me if I'm forgetting, but I don't remember if a specific mention of a set aside was included in any of those discussions. Do you remember, Rhonda?
I'm having a picture of the matrix of ideas, and it may have been floated by one business group, but it didn't get much traction because we did maybe 5 or 6 stakeholder roundtables, and there were some common themes in each of those events, but the particular idea of having a set aside didn't get traction beyond one group that had recommended it.
Yeah, and one of the issues that some of the QMBCs have had with this program is that it's hard for them they can't provide any certainty to their investors because they don't know whether or not they're going to make it into the queue. We're concerned that having any amount, whether it's 20% or a different amount, set aside would hold up that money for a longer period of time while we determine if there even are any new QMBCs to then participate and utilize those funds. And I know the amendments drafted so that if the funds aren't used, they would then revert back to the full pot for those remaining in the queue, but it does cause a time delay, and that time delay can, that's a big deal for those businesses that are waiting to determine whether or not those investments are going to come in.
Jen, I would also like to add that not all companies who apply to the program make it. The statutory regulatory requirements are a little bit more on the stringent side, but we work with companies as much as humanly possible to get all the documentation correct, to make sure that they are primarily engaged in R&D and have a commercially oriented patent protectable product. We look at their, their USPTO filing status, where they are in their product development, if they're in clinical stages. So we work with these companies extensively. Not all companies qualify, but of course that creates a timing issue for us, particularly when we're working with newer companies into the program, of having them qualify. So we're not just talking about a matter of just days or weeks. It could possibly be months, because we are working with those younger companies and making sure that they meet the programmatic requirements.
Ms. Lonnie?
I see Delegate Ivy and then Delegate Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But is there a way that a process could be created to implement this amendment? I'm asking Ms. Sinfield.
Hi, Delegate. I think similar to what Delegate Plavkovich-Carr requested earlier with, a reporting requirement for commerce. Certainly, I think this is probably would need further investigation and insights from the stakeholders to determine how a set aside would be viable, in light of the fact that currently under the statute, it is a first come, first serve situation. So I think our preference is that we do get stakeholder input regarding the set aside, and then further just delving into how would that work and how could it be administratively feasible for us.
All right, Delegate Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess my question goes back to what I kept hearing was there would be a time delay. What is the time delay for what we're discussing?
Are you asking like in a definite period of time?
No. So if the funds aren't used, they're then put back. But then I was hearing that there would be a time delay in issuing those funds. So what would the time delay be?
Yeah.
So Delegate, just to give you an example, we accepted applications to this program back in September. So in September, we had bio companies apply and investors register through the queue. We still have about 3 or 4 bio companies that we've been working with since September to have them qualify for the program. And so they're about, we're reserving funds for them well over a couple $1 million. And of course, this is a fiscal year program that's going to end in, June 30th. But those are $2 million, say, that we're holding up, and it's now April, that could go to other investors. Or, of course, we would hold them if it's meritoriously due to the bio company. But that's the sense of delay that we're talking about currently. From September to April, that money's being held for them until they qualify.
All right, I understand.
Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, it sounds to me like the department is in agreement with the intent here to try to get the credit to new QMBCs. Is that accurate?
That's my sense from them. That's why, for example, they included the lifetime cap
Right.
money that a company can qualify for.
Okay. So I guess I'm curious if there's agreement that that's an appropriate goal, does the department have a sense of how we should articulate that goal, or is it a percentage of dollars in the tax credit program? Is it a percentage of businesses receiving the credit? Like, if you were to set a goal for that, how would you approach?
I think the comments from the department earlier suggested to me that they'd really like to engage with the stakeholders before answering sort of detailed questions like
that kind of question. Okay. All right. I just didn't know if there was sort of an overarching approach. Thank you.
Well, Delegate Ivey, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we amend this amendment to require for some sort of study to take place over the interim to find out these processes and to answer these questions, really to just compel this work to take place over the interim?
Yeah, I think we can. I think one of the questions, if we do reporting, is whether we want it to be 1 year or a longer period of time to see if the reforms in this bill have an impact on it. And I'm not sure, honestly, what the answer to that is. Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, I think given the conversation today, I'd feel comfortable with withdrawing this and having something else that would be a reporting requirement, but I think the chair raises a good point. Maybe a question for Commerce, because the DLS evaluation did have data on like what percentage of the companies were new applicants. Does Commerce put that out like publicly as part of any of your other reporting requirements? So that we'd have the more recent years, and on a future basis, is that something already that you would be sharing? And if not, I would like to then see that included in whatever the amendment is that we draw up here.
Delegate, I'm not clear what you just asked if we report on.
The percentage of the tax credit recipients who are investors in new companies or companies that had not previously received had not previously been certified. Is that data on an annual basis shared publicly in any of your existing performance reports within Commerce?
So you are asking for an analysis of the investors?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people can see this. I have the DLS evaluation. If people look at page 62, they have a chart there that shows a percentage basis for each year. And this data is sourced from the Department of Commerce, but I'm not sure, is this data that Commerce puts out in any other reporting metrics through existing reports? Because if not, I would like to make sure it's in our amendment that we're getting that data.
Rhonda, I think the question is, do you all report on a regular basis in the annual reports you do or elsewhere? What percentage of the companies that are qualified are new companies as opposed to companies that are pre-existing participants in the program?
Oh, so you're talking about QMBCs, not the investors. That's where I was getting confused. I'm going to have to defer to Lonnie and Jen in terms of what they can recall is actually in our report.
Hi, I believe the answer is no. We don't report on the new companies certified each year, but we can certainly gather that data.
All right. We're running out of time, and I want to be observant of everybody's time. So first of all, we're going to have to hold SB 160 until tomorrow because we haven't had a chance to consider it yet. I will get you all a time for tomorrow's meeting as soon as possible, and hopefully that one won't change. On this amendment, Delegate Polakovich-Carr suggested she'd be willing to withdraw. Delegate Ivey had suggested an alternative amendment requiring new reporting language. Delegate Polakovich-Carr, Delegate Ivey, can you put your heads together maybe and come up with some reporting language here as an amendment? Does that work? Cool. Okay. So we will hold the final vote on this bill tomorrow. I think, I'd ask that there not be, just so we can get this bill moving, further amendments beyond that reporting amendment. Let's just go ahead and get that reporting language on and then move it out. So tomorrow we will finish up with this bill, do SB 80, SB 160, and SB 196. Okay. Everyone comfortable with that plan? Cool. Okay. Well, then thank you everyone for your hard work. Thank you in particular to the folks from the Department of Commerce who juggled their schedules to be with us, to the members who juggled their schedules to be with us. Very much appreciate it. These are the types of conversations we should be having in subcommittees. I'm glad this was a very rich conversation. So we will see everyone tomorrow in subcommittee. Have a good rest of your day.